The term canteen culture describes an informal set of values. It also includes attitudes and behaviors. These are shared among police officers in the United Kingdom. This culture is not taught in formal training. Instead, it develops organically within police forces. It grows in the spaces where officers gather. These spaces are often away from public view. Here they share experiences and forge bonds. This culture has deep roots. This informal culture emerged from the unique nature of police work. Officers frequently face stressful and dangerous situations. They rely heavily on each other for support and safety. This shared experience fosters a strong sense of camaraderie. It creates a powerful in-group loyalty. This loyalty can sometimes become all-encompassing. It can start to define how officers see the world. It shapes their understanding of their role and their relationships with colleagues. The pressures of the job contribute significantly. Police officers often work long and unsociable hours. They witness traumatic events regularly. This can lead to a sense of isolation from mainstream society. The canteen or similar informal settings becomes a sanctuary. It is a place where they can speak freely, or so they believe. They share frustrations and anxieties. This shared understanding reinforces group norms. These origins are important to understand. The culture stems from a need for mutual support and a way to cope with demanding work. However, this very solidarity can have a darker side. It can lead to an us versus them mentality. It can also foster resistance to external scrutiny, and it can perpetuate negative attitudes. These attitudes may be hidden from official view, but they significantly impact policing. Canteen culture has several defining characteristics. Cynicism is a common trait among officers. This often develops from repeated exposure to crime and what they see as societal failings. A deep suspicion of outsiders is also prevalent. This includes the public and even other agencies. This suspicion can extend to senior management sometimes. These attitudes are reinforced in informal officer interactions. They become part of the unwritten rules. Masculine norms often dominate this culture. This can create an environment that is unwelcoming, especially for women officers and those from minority groups. A specific type of dark humor is frequently used. It can be a coping mechanism for traumatic experiences. But it can also cross lines into offensive territory. This humor might involve derogatory remarks or jokes about victims or marginalized communities. These are shared away from formal oversight. An us versus them mentality is a core feature. Officers may see themselves as separate from the public they serve. They might feel misunderstood or unfairly criticized. This can lead to a defensive posture. It can also reduce empathy towards certain groups. This outlook is particularly strong during times of crisis or when the police force faces public criticism. Loyalty to colleagues often becomes paramount, sometimes more important than official rules. These characteristics are not officially sanctioned, but they are powerful in shaping behavior. They are learned through social interaction. New recruits quickly pick up on these unwritten rules. They learn what is acceptable within the group. This happens in canteens and social gatherings. It also happens in shared patrol cars and increasingly in private online chat groups. This makes the culture persistent and hard to change. The informal norms of canteen culture wield significant influence. This influence can often override formal police training. Officers receive instruction on ethics and impartial conduct. They learn about laws and official procedures. However, the daily reinforcement of canteen culture is powerful. It subtly shapes how officers interpret their roles and how they apply their training in real-world situations. The peer group becomes a primary source of guidance. Its approval can matter more than official policy. This culture directly impacts decision-making on the streets. An officer's discretion is a key part of policing. Canteen culture can sway how this discretion is used. For example, it might influence who is stopped and searched, or how a domestic abuse call is handled. Prejudices shared informally can become operational biases. This means certain communities may face unfair scrutiny, while others might not receive the help they need. Decisions can be based on stereotypes, not facts. Interactions with the public are profoundly affected. If officers harbor cynical or prejudiced views, it shows. This can manifest as rudeness or dismissiveness. It might appear as a lack of empathy or aggression. Such behavior erodes public trust and confidence. It particularly damages relationships with minority communities. These communities may already feel over-policed and underprotected. Negative encounters reinforce these perceptions and make cooperation with the police less likely. The misuse of discretionary power is a serious concern. Canteen culture can create an environment where this is tolerated, or even subtly encouraged among peers. If the group norm is to be tough or suspicious, officers might act more aggressively than necessary. They might also overlook misconduct by colleagues. This is to maintain group solidarity. The informal culture can therefore undermine accountability, and it can shield problematic behaviors from scrutiny. Canteen culture has several deeply harmful consequences. Racism is one of the most damaging. This was starkly highlighted by the McPherson Report in 1999. The report investigated the murder of Stephen Lawrence. It found the Metropolitan Police to be institutionally racist. This meant racism was present in procedures and cultural attitudes. Canteen culture perpetuates such biases. It allows stereotypes to influence police actions. This leads to disproportionate targeting of ethnic minorities. Misogyny is another severe problem fostered by this culture. The experiences of pioneering officers like Alison Halford are telling. In the 1980s and 1990s, she faced significant discrimination. Her case exposed a culture of hard drinking and sexism. More recently, other incidents have shown this persists. Female officers can face harassment from colleagues and a culture that dismisses their concerns. This misogyny also affects how police respond to crimes, especially those against women, like domestic abuse or sexual assault. The blue wall of silence is perhaps the most infamous outcome. This refers to an unwritten code of loyalty among officers. It dictates that they should not report colleagues' misconduct. This code protects officers who act improperly. It makes it incredibly difficult to address wrongdoing. Whistleblowers face ostracism or retaliation from peers. This silence undermines internal disciplinary processes. It also prevents external bodies from effective investigation. It is a major barrier to accountability. These consequences are not isolated incidents. They are systemic issues rooted in the informal culture. Racism and misogyny are not just individual failings. They are attitudes reinforced by the group. The blue wall of silence is a collective behavior. It prioritizes loyalty over integrity and justice. This culture of impunity damages public trust severely. It also harms the many good officers who are trying to do their job professionally. Section 5. Exposing the cracks, key incidents and their revelations. Several key incidents have starkly exposed canteen culture. The horrific murder of Sarah Everard in March 2021 was one. She was abducted, raped and murdered by a serving police officer. His name was Wayne Couzens. Investigations revealed he had a history of concerning behavior. He had shared offensive and misogynistic material with colleagues. Some colleagues were reportedly aware of his conduct. This case highlighted how canteen culture can enable predators and how it can downplay serious warning signs. Other specific cases have shown similar patterns. 2 Metropolitan Police officers took photos of murdered sisters. Their names were Denise Jaffa and Jamie Lewis. They shared these disturbing images on WhatsApp. This showed a shocking lack of respect and humanity. It was a clear example of deviant behavior, shared and normalized within a closed group. In another instance, a Devon and Cornwall officer shared an offensive meme. This meme related to the killing of George Floyd. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, or IOPC, has issued warnings. They are concerned about a digital form of canteen culture. Officers are using private messaging platforms like WhatsApp. They share sensitive operational information on these platforms. Worse, they share discriminatory and offensive content. This includes racist, misogynistic and homophobic remarks. They also share jokes about victims of crime. This online behavior mirrors the offline culture, but it creates a digital record of misconduct. These incidents reveal the pervasive nature of the problem. They show that canteen culture is not just harmless banter, it has real-world consequences. It can lead to the dehumanization of victims. It can foster discrimination and prejudice. It can also protect those who abuse their power. The shared material in the Sarah Everard case was deeply troubling. It indicated a culture where such attitudes were tolerated. This makes it harder for good officers to challenge wrongdoing. Section 6. understanding the roots, psychological and sociological perspectives. Now, psychological theories, they really help us explain canteen culture. Albert Bandura's social learning theory, for instance, is very relevant here. Bandura stated that people learn by observing others. They imitate behaviors they see, especially from role models. If these behaviors are rewarded or not punished, well, they continue. In policing, new recruits observe experienced officers. They learn informal norms and attitudes this way. If cynical or prejudiced remarks are common in the canteen, new officers may adopt these to fit in. Organizational socialization theory also offers insight. This theory describes how individuals learn the values of an organization. In policing, this includes both formal and informal socialization. Formal training teaches official rules and procedures, but informal socialization occurs through interactions with peers. This is where canteen culture is transmitted. New officers learn what is truly valued by the group. This might be toughness, loyalty, or suspicion of outsiders. These lessons can be more powerful than formal training. Peer reinforcement plays a crucial role. When an officer expresses an attitude aligned with canteen culture, they might receive approval from their colleagues. This could be through laughter, agreement, or inclusion. Conversely, challenging these norms can lead to negative reactions. An officer might be ostracized or labeled as an outsider. This pressure to conform is very strong. Group cohesion, while good for teamwork, can also reinforce bad norms. The desire to belong can make people accept unacceptable things. These theories explain why canteen culture is so persistent. It is not simply a collection of bad apples. It is a learned behavior reinforced by the social environment. The strong bonds between officers, forged in difficult circumstances, can inadvertently support negative aspects of the culture. Changing this requires more than just new rules. It requires understanding these deep-seated social dynamics and finding ways to reshape peer influences towards more positive and ethical standards. Section 7. Institutional responses, reports, reviews, and initial reform efforts. Numerous reports have highlighted issues within police culture. The McPherson Report in 1999 was a landmark moment. It followed the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence. The report accused the Metropolitan Police of institutional racism. This was a powerful indictment of prevailing attitudes and the culture within the police at that time. It called for sweeping reforms to address these issues. It stressed the need for greater transparency and better community engagement. More recently, the Baroness Casey Review in 2023 was published. This review focused on the Metropolitan Police again. It found systemic misogyny and racism were still present. It described a culture where offensive material was shared and complaints, especially about sexual assault, were dismissed. The review concluded that previous reform efforts had failed. They had not fundamentally changed the underlying culture. Discrimination and a lack of accountability remained. This was a deeply concerning assessment. Other bodies have also raised alarms. The Center for Women's Justice issued a super complaint in 2020. This highlighted systemic failures in police investigations, specifically when officers themselves were accused of domestic abuse. It linked these failures to cultural norms within policing. These norms prioritized loyalty to colleagues over justice. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, or IOPC, also investigates. It consistently deals with cases stemming from canteen culture, including the sharing of inappropriate online content. Despite these reports, initial reform efforts have struggled. Police forces have implemented diversity training programs. They have introduced ethics committees and codes of conduct. However, the informal dynamics of canteen culture are resilient. They often undermine these formal initiatives. Changing deeply embedded attitudes is a huge challenge. It requires more than just policies on paper. There needs to be a genuine shift in everyday interactions and in the values demonstrated by leaders. Section 8. Strategies for change towards a more accountable police culture. Effective strategies are needed to change police culture. Robust, independent oversight is essential. A 2024 Home Office report stressed this necessity. External review mechanisms can help break the blue wall of silence. They provide a route for concerns to be raised without fear of internal repercussions. The IOPC plays a role here, but its powers could be strengthened. True independence is key for public confidence and for holding forces properly accountable. Vetting and disciplinary processes must be improved. Recruitment should screen for attitudes and biases, not just focus on physical fitness or basic qualifications. Background checks need to be thorough. Any history of problematic behavior must be taken seriously. Disciplinary processes for misconduct need to be swift and fair and, crucially, consistent. Officers must see that unprofessional conduct has real consequences, including dismissal for serious breaches. Leadership commitment is fundamental to cultural change. Senior officers must champion reform actively. They must model the desired behaviors and values. This means unequivocally condemning racism, misogyny, and discrimination. It also means fostering an environment where speaking out is safe. Leaders should support whistleblowers, not punish them. They need to challenge the negative aspects of canteen culture, both publicly and within their own ranks. This requires courage and persistence. Training remains important, but it must be evidence-based. Simple tick-box diversity training is often ineffective. It can even be counterproductive if poorly designed. Cultural sensitivity training needs to be engaging. It should challenge existing biases in a constructive way. It should also focus on practical skills like de-escalation and fair communication. Ongoing professional development is better than one-off sessions. This helps to reinforce positive changes over time. Section 9, the path forward. Sustaining reform and rebuilding public trust. Addressing informal norms is crucial for lasting reform. Canteen culture operates beneath the surface. It is sustained by everyday interactions and shared assumptions. Therefore, any meaningful change must tackle these dynamics. It is not enough to simply issue new policies or to restructure departments. The underlying attitudes and behaviors must shift. This requires a long-term, multifaceted approach, one that acknowledges the complexity of culture. Transparency and accountability are paramount for progress. Police forces need to be more open about their operations and about how they handle misconduct. Independent scrutiny helps to build this transparency. When officers know their actions are subject to review, they are more likely to adhere to professional standards. Accountability means that wrongdoing has consequences. This applies to individual officers and to the organization as a whole when failings occur. Changing a deeply embedded culture is a difficult task. There will be resistance from those invested in the old ways. Progress may be slow and face setbacks. It is a generational challenge in many respects. Sustained effort is needed over many years. This requires consistent political will. It also needs ongoing commitment from police leadership and the support of officers who want positive change. There are many such officers. Ultimately, the goal is to rebuild public trust. Recent scandals have severely damaged confidence in policing, particularly among marginalized communities. Rebuilding this trust will take time and demonstrable action. The public needs to see that the police are fair, that they are accountable and act with integrity. A police service that reflects and respects all communities is essential for a healthy democracy. This must be the guiding principle for all reform efforts.